Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for having me. And it's more than enough to say it is one of the greatest pleasures of my life to be here with you wonderful people in such a beautiful city. I hope you've all had a chance to take a look at it. If you haven't, before you go, please try and make the time because... Okay, so, as you can see here, I'm Bolero from Orchestra Finance. I'm not going to talk about Orchestra Finance just yet. First, I want to tell you about my grandfather. He was European. Every year, twice a year, he'd come to Amsterdam because he loved this city. And every time he came back to Australia to see me, he'd bring me a handful of coins from one of these nations in Europe, pre-Euro. And I love those coins. They were from him. I couldn't spend those coins. I could do nothing with the coins but look at them. They were just a novelty, a curio. But they were cool, and I loved them, and I added to my little collection every time I saw him. My grandpa, he was strange. Not in a bad way. He was just a bit of a weirdo. The reason I say that is because he was a medalist as a gymnast, but he was born legally blind. He introduced me to literature, Grapes of Wrath, for example, War and Peace. He was illiterate until he was an adult. So I have a lot of respect for him because he overcome a lot of challenges. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now I'll get you some background here. DeFi. You probably know what DeFi is by now, but if you don't, it's a decentralized finance. It contrasts traditional finance, which is basically your mints, your reserves, your banks, and the bodies that govern those. DeFi, as we said, is decentralized. There's no central point controlling everything, holding all the cards, making all the calls. It's spread out to various people in various places, and anybody who uses a DeFi system adds to that. They become a part of the decentralized system. It's peer-to-peer. When I say that, I don't mean peer-to-peer as in you're going to haggle with somebody about how many beans they're going to give you for your cow. It's not quite that. What it is, though, is programmatically, over the internet, we're able to trade our goods or our tokens, or whatever it might be, directly with somebody else without the help of somebody as an escrow. It's borderless. As I mentioned, my grandfather, he was from Europe. I couldn't spend those coins that he'd bring me, no matter how much I wanted to. There was just no call for it in Australia. But on the internet, using these tokens, using these cryptocurrencies that we all have access to now, we can make these trades, we can make these exchanges across borders. It's non-custodial. Nobody holds on to your valuables but you. And that's very important. And it's unbiased. So to bring up my grandfather again, he was an immigrant to Australia. He brought his young family over in the hopes of a better life. What did he find? He found that his skills from Europe didn't transfer over to Australia. Not because they weren't applicable, because they wouldn't be allowed. He didn't have the right licensing. He didn't have the right people to call up and say, yeah, he's a good guy. Because the language barrier, because the distance, the technology wasn't there. So he worked as a blue-collar class worker. And unfortunately, that meant he had less pay than he would have hoped for. And it also meant he got a lot less respect. So, after he saved up enough money so that he could put down a deposit for a home, he went to the bank, his bank. He had a meeting with the manager and he said, I want to buy a home. Here's the money that you need. Please, support me. Let me buy this home for my family. The manager didn't have any of it. He didn't have enough English. He didn't have the right pedigree in his work or in his background as an Australian because he was European. So the manager said, no, sorry, not this time. And my grandfather left disappointed, but we'll get back to that story. Okay, so AMM DEXs. AMM is Automated Market Maker. You've probably heard quite a bit about it today and in the past as it's become a very big topic. And the DEX is a decentralized exchange. As the name suggests, it's automated. You don't need to whip out a piece of paper and a calculator every time you want to do something and start making up sums. You just trust the little man in the computer to take care of it. It's speedy. I'll give you a bit of information on this. If you haven't already gathered from any of the other talks or you don't know, the way it works is AMMs rely on liquidity pools. You put your assets into these pools along with others, and whenever somebody wants to make a trade using these assets, they can directly take from that pool and fill their order immediately, rather than waiting for somebody to say, yeah, I'll take that. It makes for a lot of speed. So much speed, in fact, that the only thing that usually holds it back is the transaction speed of the blockchain it's on. We'll talk a little bit more about that too. It rewards participation. We just talked about adding liquidity to pools. If you put your liquidity into the pool, you turn AMM from automated market maker into automatic money maker, because you will make yourself a little bit of interest with every transaction that happens related to that pool you're a part of. It's not much. It's only a small fraction, and you've got to share it with all the other liquidity makers, but you share it frequently, and it adds up quickly. It's approachable. Okay, now this one is probably not such a big deal for people like yourselves, who are tech-minded, who have been here as an early adopter. But to most people out there, if they can't immediately walk up to it and understand how to use it, woo, no thank you. Okay? And because of all these things, it's convenient. That's very important. More and more people have less time. More and more people have shorter attention spans. So if we can do something quickly, if we can make a transaction instead of spending an afternoon in the city going to our bank, just on the 5-minute train ride to work, it's a life changer. Okay. So the AMM proposal. As I just said, probably heard a lot about it by now, so I won't talk on it for long. The way it works is it uses AMM instances. This is different from what we already have on platforms like Ethereum. The reason being, Ethereum relies on smart contracts. Smart contracts are built on top of that. It's not the same thing. In the case of XRPL, it's built in to the protocol. All you have to do is create an instance of an AMM, and you can add or remove liquidity from that pool. We have votable trading fees. We talked about adding liquidity. If you are a liquidity provider, you then become eligible to vote on the fate of that pool. What that means is the trading fee, what that will be, how much somebody is going to pay when they trade using that liquidity pool. It can go up to 1%. You don't decide that by yourself, though. You decide it with all the other liquidity providers providing to that pool. And the continuous auction. I don't know if any of you have actually heard about this, because it's kind of new news, but that was previously an auction where you would live bid and continue to bid to hold the top position, and previously it was going to be 100% reduction in trading fee. Unfortunately, that's no longer the case. We don't know exactly why yet. We have reached out to the right people, and they've given us an answer, but they gave it to me, and I'm not the technical-minded one compared to our lead developer. So hopefully he'll be able to give us more information, and we'll get that to you guys as soon as we know too. Okay, so why XRPL? Why not Ethereum? XRPL is blossoming at such an extreme rate now. We've had the good news recently with the legal stuff, and as you've already seen today and yesterday, far too many things to talk about are happening right now, to be excited about, and it's amazing. So, we talked about the baked-in AMM. It's not on a smart contract. That reduces risk. You might know smart contracts are often the #1 way people will scam people. They will trick you into thinking you're buying an NFT or you're making a swap, and they will drain your entire wallet. We don't have to worry about that if it's something that's already built in. As well as that, the liquidity pools aren't segregated, meaning you have far less pools and deeper pools. And that's a good thing because it helps keep a balance in the price. You're not going to get a big swing over just one medium-sized trade. Set transaction fees. Plenty of talk about that already. David Schwartz talked about it. The transaction fee on XRPL, minuscule. If you look at something like Ethereum, you'll have gas. Gas can get crazy. I don't know about any of you, but I've run into problems where I've paid more on a transaction fee than the transaction itself, very frequently, and I hate it. And the problem is, the more that those systems are getting used, That usually means the more the fee will be. That's not what we want. No front running. That's what we thought. So Vito gave a wonderful talk not long ago, and he informed us that that's not quite the case. We'll find out more information about that. And obviously that's new, surfacing stuff, and it's a problem we'll all solve together. But hopefully it's still, as Vito said, a lot better than something like Ethereum. Okay, so I mentioned that set transaction fee. Small story time. I went to America when I was young and naive. I thought I was pretty cool. I had money. I was just coming out of my teens. I thought, I have a job, you know. I'm traveling overseas and my parents aren't there to hold my hand. I'm going to have a great time. I've got this. I really believed it. Within 4 hours of landing in California, I got mugged. It sucked. I lost all my money, had a gun pointed at me, and it kind of soured the trip, but you know what? I was young. I bounced back. Then I had my family send me some money. I thought, I'm going to be fine. I'll just pay them back. And then I went to buy something, and it was marked as $17. So I had $20 ready. I'll take this, please. That'll be $28, please, sir. Why? I don't know about you guys. Some of you might actually be American. But it shocked the heck out of me to find out that I had to pay tax on top of the ticket price. Then I had to pay a gratuity. And then they had the nerve to push forward the tip cup, like, okay, sir, please. I was not happy. Changed my life for you. I don't want that. I don't want it on XRPL. I don't want it in crypto at all. So that's what's so good about those set transaction fees. Finally, I'll talk about Orchestra. So we are Orchestra Finance. This is not our first rodeo. We've actually worked in leading DeFi projects, on leading cryptocurrencies, and on DeFi marketplaces. What are those? Unfortunately, I can't tell you, because the team's decided for our safety and security, it's better we don't talk about our histories. I can give you a little bit of mine if we talk privately after, but I can't speak about anyone else. So why Orchestra? So we have DeFi with animals, DeFi with foods, DeFi with animals with foods, and we wanted to do something different. So we took music, and we're leaning into that theme. Orchestra is the name. As you can see in the design, we go with things like, sine waves and something that sort of symbolizes music. My name is Bolero. Everyone else on the team has a musical name too, and the theme will play out through the rest of our business. What are our motivations? To build upon intrinsic advantages of XRPL. I already spoke about those earlier. It's fast, it's cheap, the AMM is built in, and it's blossoming. We want to build something new. Orchestra isn't a clone. You may have heard of Uniswap, SushiSwap, PancakeSwap, etc., etc. It's all a copy-paste of the same thing with a new paint of skin. We don't want that. We wanted to build something new from the ground up that everybody can appreciate, that works specifically for XRPL. And we want to deliver and maintain a quality product. We're not going to say, okay, it's finished, we're out of here. That's not what we're about. We're sticking around. We're going to keep this thing going into the future. And we're going to make sure that with all the changes that come to XRPL, we'll be flexible, we'll change, and we'll ride that wave, and we'll give everybody what they need to keep ahead. What are our objectives? To create an XRPL-worthy alternative to leading AMMs. Uniswap, SushiSwap, those ones I've already mentioned. We want to be mentioned in the same breath. We want everybody thinking, okay, this is the place to go on XRPL. We want to provide an intuitive, pain-free user experience. It's nothing worse than trying to do something and getting frustrated that you can't do it. And we want to leave users with a lasting positive experience of both Orchestra and XRPL. That's our ultimate objective. We want people to come to XRPL and like it. Just working is not enough. Actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell the rest of the story about my grandfather. Sorry about that. So, as I mentioned, my grandfather went to the bank and tried to get himself a loan. He got rejected. But my grandfather was tough. He was a kid during World War II, and for his large family to survive, the only way they could get food in those war zones was for my grandfather and his similarly younger sibling to go out in the middle of the night and sneak to the occupied farms where the soldiers were and dig for potatoes. And that's what they did. And usually the soldiers would shoot somebody doing that on sight. But fortunately, young children would just get swift kick up the butt. So my grandfather would do that night after night. Sometimes he'd fail, sometimes he'd succeed, but he wouldn't give up. And he never gave up looking for that home loan as well. He went to every bank in the entire city over the course of the next few weeks. And he learned from each experience that he had, each knockback. Why? He used better words, dressed better, and approached in a different manner. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough. And he got frustrated. But he went back to his own bank because people kept saying to him, why us? Why not your own bank? He went back to his first manager and he said, look, I really need this loan. I've worked hard. I've got the money. I've got the steady job. What else do I need to do? And they talked. And at the end, the manager reached out his hand and said, sorry, there's nothing I can do for you. My grandfather reached out to shake the hand. The manager moved it. He was showing him the door. He didn't want to shake his hand. He thought lowly of this man. My poor grandfather, as I mentioned, he was a gymnast, and he had enough. He leapt up onto the desk, grabbed the manager by the collar, and he said, I'm not leaving here until we sign this piece of paper. It worked. I do not condone this. Do not try it. But the point is, he had a motivation, which was to provide for his family. His objective got knocked back many times, but because he was motivated, he didn't give up. He kept trying. That's what we plan to do. Keep moving forward. Keep doing. Now, just working is not enough. We want people to come and try out Orchestra. We want people to come and try out XRPL. We want them to have a goal, might be to trade or to create some liquidity, and think, that was great, I enjoyed it so much, I want to see what else we can do here on XRPL. We should do the hard work as developers. We shouldn't expect our users to do that. So if we can use our time and our code and our effort, our planning, to save the user any amount of discomfort or remove any hurdles, we should do it. Somebody will get confused. I promise you, no matter how clear you think it is, you're always cursed with the burden of knowledge. I can tell you this, I came here to Amsterdam knowing to expect a great deal of bicycles. When I walked out in the street, I saw a road. People were driving on the opposite side to what I'm used to, but that's okay. I can deal with that. I saw a footpath. I know how to walk, that's great. And I saw a bike lane. I've got this. Less than an hour in, I was nearly hit by a motorcycle driving on the footpath. I don't understand why. But he called me an idiot, and I agree, I was. I didn't have the knowledge, I wasn't prepared. If it can feasibly be accommodated, do it. It might take an extra 2 days of work, might mean an all-nighter, it might mean you can't release at your objective time. But if it's going to help in the long run, and it's going to make the user feel welcome and better, do it. Here's an example of that. So we talked about earlier the voting, and we talked about the fact that when you vote, you don't decide the percentage yourself. But what you do is have a say based on how much liquidity you've put in. It's a weighted vote. It's not easy to do the math for that. It's not easy to show it. And when you vote, the result isn't going to be certain. So what we've done is we've created a smart vote option. What that does is it gives you the closest to your desired result as possible. It does the math for you, it takes out the hard work, saves you the headache. That's the approach we're taking. More than the sum of its parts. So why we called ourselves Orchestra is because an orchestra is more than a sum of its parts. It's not just a violin, or a bass, or a cello. It's what they can all do together that the others can't do alone. So we will do the heavy lifting with our code, We won't leave it to the user. We will provide users with the information they need. There's nothing worse than trying to achieve something and not being sure if you can. You need that information. On the flip side, you don't want so much information that you're overwhelming your users. No user wants to sit down and need to earn themselves a degree to understand what they're looking at. Provide context and relevance. When you open a page on anything, it's expected usually that you're going to follow along with what you're doing. But the phone might ring, something else might happen, your cat might jump in the window, and you might forget where you're up to. So it's always good to not have to go back to the first page. It's always good to not be able to get stuck and think, where am I? We can't give you a bookmark, but we can make sure every page and every window has a title that says, this is what you're doing. And it lets you confirm that you are on the same track. Make use of Gestalt. That's not The Witcher, it's not Henry Cavill. I know a lot of people would like to make use of Henry Cavill. But what Gestalt is, it's a psychological principle that means this: more than the sum of its parts. If I gave you a chute, some struts, and a ladder, you have a chute, some struts, and a ladder. But if you combine those, you have yourself a slide, and you could do something that you couldn't with the individual parts. We use proven design techniques, as all people should. Color theory, hierarchy, all those sort of things that you shouldn't have to think hard to understand. We're all born with an innate understanding of those things. Handrails and guidelines, not hand-holding and leashes. Imagine kids playing on a playground. If an adult had to stand there and hold each one's hand as they went up, no matter how confident they became, they would soon grow sick of playing on the swing, or the slide, or the seesaw. Often, the best work is invisible. That's what it all comes down to. We are doing the hard work, so the user doesn't have to. If the kid wants to play on the playground, let them play. Your job designing the playground is to make sure that there are no screws poking out that are going to scrape and cut, that there are no places they're going to hit their head when they try to run, that there are no things that are going to fall apart because they weigh too much. Everything needs to be planned ahead. We be Apollonian. We make things that are smooth, logical, rational, and thought out, so that they can be Dionysian. They can jump in. They can enjoy. They can be chaotic. They can go with their feelings, and they can enjoy themselves in a way that they don't have to measure any of their actions. So here's an example of that. We've got everything we've talked about here. Things are collectively joined. We have white that comes ahead of the grays. We have the orange that stands out, the smart vote we spoke about earlier. The context at the top, trading fee voting, just in case you forgot. And here's a little understanding for you. If you're still not sure, here's some information. There's some more information. We don't want you to get stuck. We want you to have fun. And when you're all done and you're not sure what to do next, the big obvious button that says exactly the verb that you're doing, vote. So what's next? We want to continue supporting Orchestra. We don't want to just leave it out in the wind and move on. Limit orders. David Schwartz spoke about this earlier. It's been around for a long time. And technically, this is something we can do right now. But we're focused on the AMM. That doesn't mean that limit orders aren't coming, as well as interoperability, like David spoke about. We're bringing that very soon. Analytics. Third parties can provide these things for you, but we want those things available to you. Not by design in a way that it's in your face, but by design in a way that if you want it, it's there. You get to choose. A mobile app. Presently, mobile apps, we run things like some, and people might use for other crypto, things like MetaMask. We will have our own app that handles everything for you, designed for you with our specifications in mind. NFTs. It's only a small thing, but for OGs, people who pick up Orchestra Finance at release, we'll have a special reward for you, an extra special reward, should I say. A rare NFT just for you, just for the original people. No one else will get them. After that, though, who knows? We haven't thought that far ahead, but sky's the limit. Open source. Unfortunately, straight away, we won't make everything open source. We want that little advantage. We want that exclusivity. But after a period of time passes that we're comfortable enough, that we've established ourselves, we want to open source for everyone. We want everybody to be able to check the source, feel confident in the source, and build upon the source. And if people want to go ahead, clone it, it's a free world. It's decentralized. EVM sidechains and hooks, we're still not sure where those things are going. They're not out. They're not available, completely available to us just yet. So take it with a grain of salt. Just a grain, though, because most of this, as we've seen in other talks, it seems pretty solid right now. And more. Yet to be decided, yet to be at least announced. So, all right, so thank you very, very much, everyone, for coming along. From the big dog himself mentioning Orchestra Finance in his opening talk, to the super fans who have flown here from across the seas and come and given us so much support, beautiful questions, and big love. We appreciate all of it on behalf of all of the team. Thank you all so very much. If you'd like to visit orchestra.finance, you can check out Orchestra Finance in its testnet release right now. With one caveat, it's not available on mobile phones yet. So please, take a look, give us feedback, let us know. We are building this for you, not just for ourselves. If you have an idea, give it to us. We are very happy to listen. Thank you all so much. Round of applause for you all for coming today. Thank you.